Mr. Chairman. These conversations are all too timely. I think as a lot of us in the field know, the significance of a recent Supreme Court ruling that limited the scope of the Clean Water Act, and more specifically, the federal government's ability to protect thousands of miles of rivers, streams, creeks, and adjacent wetlands throughout the western United States. At the California State Water Board, this is how they framed it last month. Wetlands provide an important buffer and filter protecting our nation's waters. But in the semi-arid watershed, most will not be able to satisfy the court's requirements for a, quote, continuous surface connection to bodies that are, quote, waters of the United States in their own right, so that there's no clear demarcation between waters and wetlands. Ms. Baloff, as given your role in the city of Phoenix, I wanted to ask, are there particular challenges posed by an increasingly arid West for aquatic ecosystem restoration projects? And I guess the bigger picture question here is, how important is ecosystem restoration, not just for the restoration of habitat, but for the economic health of communities, as well as water quality, recreational opportunities, et cetera?
Yeah, thank you, Senator Padilla. Yes, it's very important, and it's also challenging in the desert Southwest. But ecosystem restoration, I would argue, especially along our rivers, is one of the most valuable things that we can do in terms of ecosystem restoration. These riparian areas are some of the most productive and rich areas and have the most benefit. They also draw a lot of economic interest in development along the banks as well. And so it also draws a lot of people into the river and really helps them connect with nature, which I think we know from social sciences really provides a lot of mental and emotional and social and physical benefits to our communities. So while it's a challenge, I think it's a challenge well worth pursuing.
Great. I know in your testimony you mentioned that the genesis of the Tres Rios Ecosystem Restoration Project was a need to treat wastewater discharges. As a native of Los Angeles, I know all too well the challenges of restoring aquatic ecosystems in a highly paved urban area like Los Angeles. Thanks to many years of hard work, as well as funding from the bipartisan infrastructure law, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the City of LA is making progress to restore historic riparian and freshwater marsh habitat along 11 miles of the 52-mile-long Los Angeles River. But referencing back to the Tres Rios project, in brief, how's that impacting drought resiliency? I assume it's been helpful. I assume there's been progress. Anything you can highlight? And then, once again, more broadly, what advice would you have for Western cities looking to improve water quality and to restore habitats while facing all the same challenges?
Yes, thank you, Senator Padilla. So I'm going to try and remember all of those questions. I might need to refresh me on a couple of them as I go on.
How's the project working? The Tres Rios project. How's that working?
I'm sorry, say that again.
How's it working?
Yeah. So Tres Rios was originally constructed, as you say, to treat wastewater effluents. So the water is treated at our wastewater treatment plant, and then it goes into these constructed wetlands that actually help to polish and finish, remove some nitrogen, chlorine attenuation, things like that, to meet Clean Water Act requirements before we then discharge it into the river. In fact, all of the water that supports the Tres Rios ecosystem restoration does, in fact, come from that wastewater treatment plant. So all of the water from that wastewater treatment plant is beneficially reused, which I think is one of the really great aspects of this and a really good way to use water, especially in a time of drought, because it's not only going into the ecosystem, it's going downstream and being used in other ways downstream as well.
Okay. And then just again, given that experience, whether it's design, whether it's funding sources, what advice would you have to other jurisdictions throughout the West dealing with the same changing climate, the same water supply challenges?
Yeah, I certainly know that the wastewater treatment process that we engaged in with the constructed wetlands saved us hundreds of millions of dollars in terms of what we would have otherwise had to spend. So simply from a financial perspective, it made a lot of sense, but also the benefits that we accrue from the flood attenuation, flood risk management, from the ecosystem restoration, and the visitors we get from not only around the world, but also from our local community and across the United States, make this a really valuable project. So certainly we have found it extremely beneficial, and I would definitely advocate for looking at ways to have those multiple uses of water that provide those multiple benefits that we've seen from Tres Rios.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That was an interesting description of the work that you've done out there. It's really ingenious, and it's highly commendable.